request. Raton Jr. asked, would you do another video showing the complete rigging of your hand line and reel setup, explaining all the different types of line on your reel, leader, shock cord, fly line, and etc., and why you set up your reel this way. Also, please give recommendations for tweaking your rig, your reel setup for different fishing conditions. Thanks. Yeah, I would love to do that. And in fact, I want this Handline 101 series that I've started this year to be exactly that. And let's just start with my basic rig. And we'll start from the terminal end and move backward through the reel. The terms I use come from fly fishing. That's why you don't hear me say terminal end or terminal tackle. It's in fly fishing, it's the tippet. It's the tip of the leader, right? So I put a lure, and I will tip this with a cut piece of meat, piece of my salted bluegill. Just type in salted bluegill, you'll see my whole videos on that. One of my flies, this one is just a shad imitation. The reason I use a lure and tip it with bait is because that gives me the greatest effectiveness. It's more effective than just the lure by itself or just the bait by itself. This is 12-pound test line. The only reason I'm using that is because I like light line and I fish in clear water. The river is pretty sooty now, and I would probably bump this up to 20 if I were fishing right now, but I got 12 on the line. Now from that, I will come up a cubit. Cubit is just 18 inches up here to my elbow, and I'll tie a dropper knot. Get on animated knots for knots. 1, 2, 3, just 3, not 5 like they recommend. And I'll tie a dropper loop. You see that? It's a dropper. A little bit too big, but it'll be fine for now. And from there I'll tie another lure. Maybe the same color, maybe a different color. Doesn't really matter. And that goes on like that, just straight through. Rat Dog on a previous video mentioned the popper dropper rig. It's just this. It's almost exactly the same thing, except I'm not on the surface of the water. It's below the surface, and it's a dropper lure. So it's a lure here, bait, bait. The reason I put a dropper here is to make sure there's two baits. If two baits on the rod, or it creates more of a feeding action in the water. All right, especially a lot of times if a fish will come and target this one and miss it, they'll circle back around, and this one's coming right in front of their face, and they'll hit that one, right? And so doesn't mean I'll catch twice as many fish. It just means I'm increasing my chances of catching the one fish that I'm targeting. So here, 18 inches up, or a cubit, just a forearm's length up, you have another lure. And then here I have, from that, you've got at 6 feet, it's almost 12 feet of line. That's just the leader, or the tippet really, as I call it. And then that goes to what I call my shock leader, which is way too long. It should only be about 3 feet. This is nothing more than a furled leader. Look up furled leaders. You'll probably find one of my videos. There's plenty of guys who show you how to tie a furled leader. It's the same furled leader that trout fishermen use, right? This one is 5 inches long. I think I had it on my old fly rod. And I made this one out of 20-pound. I think I made it out of maybe 15-pound line. And then it's going down to 12-pound line on the tippet. Okay? I call it the shock leader because it pulls. There's a lot of pull. What you have here, although this is about 5 feet of line, there's about 20 feet of monofilament wrapped and twisted into this 5 feet shock leader. Now, why do I use a shock leader? Because when you're handline fishing, you do not have the advantage of the rod to absorb the shock of the fish. And especially if I'm trolling and I have 500 pounds worth of boat moving this way, and you catch a 50-pound striper hitting the lure that way, what do you think is going to happen to the line if you don't have a way to absorb the shock? That's why I don't generally use braid on my hand lines. Furled leader, I call it a shock leader because that's its purpose. Its job is to absorb the shock. The line has to do the work of the rod. From there, I go to my main line. Okay, just like in fly fishing, and in this case I use 7-weight sinking, fully sinking fly line. This happens to be weight forward. Why do I use fly line? The number one thing you have to do with handline fishing is protect your hands. While this is sensitive, you can, you can easily cut your hand open, and you look at some of these guys fishing salt water for really big fish, and there's just gashes in their hands. You can really hurt yourself. Probably monofilament. If you look at guys in salt water, they're using 200 and 300 pound test line, and that's the best protection for their hands. While they put usually a old piece of inner tube or hose pipe over their fingers to help protect their fingers that way. What I chose to do was go with fly line, because fly line is a very advanced line, and very advanced. You can get floating fly line, you can get sinking fly line, you can design your own fly lines the way the Skagit guys do it, or you can get intermediate line where the back half of the line floats and the front half of the line sinks. And you can do all kinds of things like weight forward lines and all that, not for casting purposes, but if I have a sinking line, that means this line sinks in the water and I can control the depths better. If I'm just wanting to fish the top of the water column, I'll get floating fly line and just drag that behind the boat. This rig that I'm showing you is my trolling rig. It's rigged exactly like a fly rod. The only difference is I just don't have it on a fly rod. Fly fishermen have their hands on the line all the time. They have to use it to help aid in the casting. They use it to retrieve, and they even set the hook with the line. They're basically handline fishing. They're just using the assistance of a fly rod to help with the cast and to help absorb the shock, right? And there's just the beauty of the fly cast. Well, I just took that and used it in my hand line. So this is 100 feet of sinking fly line, fully sinking fly line. The only reason I'm using 7-weight is because my old fly rod was 7-weight. If you're going to use sinking fly line, get a minimum of 7-weight fly line, because once you get below about 6 or 7 weight, it's just not worth it having sinking line. The back end of this is using a simple nail knot, right? And that's going to 50-pound test monofilament. That's my backing, right? Whereas in fly fishing, they'd probably have 20-pound test or 30-pound test braid backing, probably Dacron. I use monofilament backing. Why? Because monofilament is far safer for your hands. Braid will cut you like a butter knife through bologna. So you have to be very careful. Now, some people can use braid. You'll definitely be more sensitive because it's braid, but you need to have some kind of protection on your hands. Like, I don't know how much backing I have, or maybe 100 feet of line, but that's about it. Literally, when I get on the river, I will let all that line out and trolling on the river and have that line in my hand as I'm trolling, okay? That is my basic rig. If I need to get deeper, I simply add split shots onto the weights or put a heavy weight on the bottom and fish in a pattern oyster rig, which I'll have to cover in a future video because this video is already getting long. That's the basic rig that I use most of the time on the hand line for both for drifting and trolling.